Welcome back to the deep dive. We're
Yeah.
here to, cut through the noise on some really crucial topics. And today, we're taking a deep plunge into criminology, which sounds maybe a bit academic, but it's really about understanding the pulse of society.
Yeah.
It's more than just crime itself.
Oh, absolutely. It's about the connections, often hidden ones, between crime and, well, how our world works, how we live in it.
Right. So our mission today, for you listening, is to really unpack criminology.
Yeah, give you a clear, kind of nuanced picture. We want to look at the core ideas, what it actually is, its nature, how incredibly broad it is.
And maybe most importantly, why it matters. The practical side.
Exactly. We've got some great sources, and we're aiming for those moments, those aha moments that help make sense of it all. Cut through the overload.
Okay, so let's start right at the beginning then. If you had to boil it down, what is criminology?
Well, the sources define it pretty clearly.
Yeah.
It's the scientific study of crime as a social phenomenon.
And the thing that jumped out at me just digging into the material was how interdisciplinary it is. It's not just one neat box.
Not at all. It draws from sociology, psychology, law, economics. So many fields.
And it focuses on basically three things,
Right.
right? How we make laws,
Uh-huh.
how people break those laws.
And then crucially, how society reacts when laws are broken.
Yeah.
And that scientific study part, that was a game changer.
How so?
Well, before criminology really embraced, empirical methods, a lot of talk about crime was more philosophical or moralistic.
Okay.
This shift towards systematic observation, towards evidence, looking at crime stats, surveys, case studies,
Actual data.
it lets us move beyond just arguing about right and wrong and actually test ideas, test theories about why crime happens and maybe what stops it.
So it's more about what is happening rather than just what we think should be.
Precisely. Understanding reality first.
And viewing crime as a social phenomenon, that really shifts the focus, doesn't it?
Com-
It means you're not just looking at the individual who committed the act in isolation.
Exactly. Criminology sees crime as, woven into the fabric of society. It's tied up with our interactions, our social structures, all these wider processes.
There's a whole web.
It is. And that web is constantly changing. Society changes. Norms shift.
New types of crime emerge.
Right, like cybercrime. That wasn't really a thing decades ago in the same way. So criminology has to adapt constantly. It's dynamic.
It's not some dusty old textbook field.
Definitely not. It's living, breathing.
Which I guess leads to the idea that it's an applied science, too. It's not just theory for theory's sake.
No, the whole point is to take the insights, the understanding, and use them. Apply them to real-world problems.
Like a what? What are we talking about?
Things like crime prevention designing strategies that actually work, or informing criminal justice reform, making the system better, improving rehabilitation programs.
Got it. So practical outcomes.
Practical outcomes, and that focus is why the scope is just so vast.
Okay, let's talk about that scope then. Where does criminology look?
Well, a huge part is the etiology of crime, the causes.
Why people commit crimes.
Yeah, but it's way more complex than just that. It's exploring all the different factors.
And the sources break this down really well, I thought. It shows the layers. You've got biological factors,
Genetics, neurology, things like that.
then psychological factors,
Yeah,
personality, mental health, learning theories.
right.
But then it zooms out, doesn't it, to the sociological level.
Yeah, looking at things like poverty, inequality, how communities are organized or disorganized.
Culture, family, peer pressure.
All of that. And economic factors, too. Unemployment, big wealth gaps.
What's really striking is how these things interact. It's rarely just one cause, is it?
Almost never. You might see studies suggesting a genetic marker could increase impulsivity,
Okay.
but maybe only if combined with certain stresses early in life. It's that interplay that's key.
It's complex.
Very. And the scope goes beyond just causes. There's the whole sociology of law.
Which is about,
How laws get made in the first place, how they're enforced, how they change, and importantly, what impact they have on society. Who benefits? Who is disadvantaged?
makes sense. Then you've got the study of different types of crime, right?
Yep. Criminal behavior systems. Crime isn't monolithic.
So violent crime, property crime.
White-collar crime, organized crime, cybercrime. Criminology looks at the specific patterns and characteristics of each. You need that detail to understand how to respond.
Yeah, you can't treat everything the same.
Exactly. And then there's a subfield that's become incredibly important. Victimology.
Focusing on the victims of crime.
Yes. Their experiences, the impact it has on them, the relationship between victims and offenders sometimes, and crucially, what support they need.
That feels like a really necessary shift. It wasn't always like that, was it?
No, it emerged to make sure the justice system wasn't just focused on the offender. Victimology provides the data that pushes for, trauma-informed approaches, restitution, not just punishment.
Got it. Okay, what else falls under this huge scope?
Well, there's criminology and corrections.
Hmm.
That's the study of punishment and how we treat offenders.
So prisons, probation, that sort of thing.
hmm It looks at the theories behind punishment, like retribution versus rehabilitation, deterrence, incapacitation,
The big debates.
the big debates, and how those theories play out in prisons, jails, but also alternative sanctions like community service or parole.
Right.
Then there's crime prevention and control, investigating strategies and policies aimed at actually reducing crime.
Community programs, policing tactics.
All of that, trying to
Yeah.
figure out what works based on evidence.
And finally, criminology also looks at the criminal justice system itself.
Yes, it critically analyzes it. The
Yeah.
police, the courts, corrections. It examines how effective they are, how fair they are, and what impact the whole system has on crime and on society overall.
Okay, wow. That's a massive field.
It really is.
So let's connect this back. Why should all this matter to you listening? What's the real world utility here?
Well, first off, it's absolutely vital for informing public policy. Criminological research gives policymakers evidence, not just gut feelings or political rhetoric, but actual data to help develop crime prevention programs that might actually work, or smarter sentencing, or better correctional reforms.
So making policy based on facts, ideally.
That's the goal. It also helps society, helps us understand crime better, move beyond those simplistic black and white views you often get from, say, the media.
Seeing the complexity in offenders and victims.
Exactly. And by studying the system and finding its flaws, criminology helps make it better. More just, more effective, more humane.
That touches on rehabilitation too, I suppose.
Directly. It informs the programs designed to help offenders reintegrate into society successfully. The aim there is reducing reoffending, breaking those cycles.
And you mentioned victimology.
Right. Those studies lead directly to tangible improvements like better support services, counseling, compensation for victims, helping people rebuild their lives.
That's huge. Are there other practical aspects?
Sure. Just understanding this stuff opens doors, career-wise. Law enforcement, corrections, social work, advocating for victims, analyzing policy, research. Lots of paths.
Interesting.
And maybe on a broader level, it promotes social justice by looking hard at inequality, systemic issues that contribute to crime. Criminology pushes for fairer policies.
Maybe even just for us personally.
Yeah, on a personal level, understanding crime patterns, knowing about prevention strategies, it can empower you, help you make informed choices for your own safety, your community's safety, gives you a more critical lens.
Okay, so it's clear it's useful. Now let's dig into that relationship you mentioned earlier, the sort of dance between crime and society.
Right. This is fundamental. The sources really emphasize this. Crime isn't separate from society. It's deeply linked. Crime is, in many ways, a social product.
Meaning society itself creates the conditions for it.
To a significant extent, yes. The way society is structured, its norms, its values, its inequalities. These all influence crime rates and the types of crime you see.
Can you give an example?
Sure, think about something like strain theory.
Okay.
It suggests that when society puts huge emphasis on certain goals, like financial success,
Which it definitely does.
right, but doesn't provide everyone with legitimate ways to achieve those goals, well, that creates strain, pressure. And for some, crime becomes a way to try and reach those goals.
Ah, so society's values can inadvertently push people towards crime if the opportunities aren't there.
It's a powerful example of how society itself can shape criminal behavior. And the flip side is true, too. Society's reaction to crime shapes everything.
How so?
Public opinion, fear of crime, these things heavily influence the criminal justice system. Fear can lead to demands for tougher laws, more prisons, more policing.
Which might not always be the best or fairest solution.
It can sometimes create new problems or worsen existing inequalities.
So crime is obviously a social problem. It causes harm, breaks trust.
Absolutely. It disrupts social order, creates economic losses, inflicts terrible harm. It can really fray the social fabric, lead to insecurity.
But you also mentioned, paradoxically, it can sometimes lead to change.
Yeah, sometimes crime, or a big public reaction to it, shines a spotlight on deeper issues. It can force society to confront problems, maybe lead to legislative reform, or make us rethink policies that clearly aren't working.
An uncomfortable catalyst.
Plain times. And societies use different ways to try and control behavior, right? Social control mechanisms.
Like laws and police.
That's formal control. But there's also informal control, family expectations, what your community thinks, peer pressure.
Oh, okay.
And the balance and effectiveness of both formal and informal controls really impact crime levels.
And this all ties into social cohesion, how connected people feel.
Definitely. High crime rates tend to weaken social bonds. People become more fearful, more isolated.
Makes sense.
But strong communities where people feel connected and look out for each other, strong social cohesion that can act as a buffer, a protective factor against crime.
So wrapping this all up, our deep dive really underscores that crime isn't simple. It's not just about individual choices in a vacuum.
Not at all. It's this incredibly complex, dynamic social thing. It's tied umbilically to the society it exists in.
It influences society, society influences it.
Yeah.
This constant back and forth,
Constant reciprocal dance, yeah.
which leaves us, and you listening, with something to think about.
A final provocative thought. Given this intricate dance between crime and society,
Yeah.
what parts of how we currently respond to crime might actually be maybe inadvertently making some problems worse? Or, put another way, what social policies do we have now that might be unintentionally creating environments where certain crimes are, well, more likely to happen?
That's a heavy question.
It is, but it's worth considering. Maybe watch the news, look at policy debates through that criminological lens we've talked about today, see what you notice.